better than we do. Now, we're not saying we're going to get an HSBC next week, but if we come together and we're selling all disciplines, we have a much better chance of doing that. You know, as we sit today, if a sponsor came in and said, you know, for instance, I'd like to sponsor all of the female riding groups that exist in Australia, we'd have to get 19 people on a conference call. By the time we work the diaries out, that might take a month. Then we'd try to gather some data about all the female riding groups in Australia. We probably wouldn't have that data in a consistent way, so we'd have to collect it and collate it and pull that together. Maybe that takes 2 months. So we're already 3 months in. Let's say we're lucky and we actually secure that sponsorship. Then we have a fight amongst 19 groups about how we divide it. The more likely thing is they go off and sponsor AFLW or something like that. We make it hard to deal with commercial sponsors because of our structure. We also make it hard to deal with government. We don't have, as I said earlier, anybody full-time on the lobbying side. So during the last federal election, lots of groups got handouts that were infrastructure related. Cycling got basically nothing. You know, again, one of the ones I compare to is cricket. Now, they're a bigger sport. They've got a big TV deal that helps pay for a lot of things. But they've got 12 full-time lobbyists that are basically out there all the time, hassling local government, state government. You know, we need some lights on this ground. We need some female change facilities. We need another ground in a new suburb. That's, you know, we're not going to be there on day one with a dozen people, but we need to actually get active. And why don't we have that now? Because we're not resourced enough to do it. We can save, by chipping away at some of these small efficiencies, we can afford to offer better services to our members that can improve the outcomes for the system as a whole. I'm not going to sort of go too much into this, but you know, this I suppose describes the 3 license problem and the difficulty of selling the sport. This describes some of the dysfunction of the federated model. And again, you know, I've only been in this role 18 months. I would say during that time, there've been 3 instances where a decision of the CA and state federation has been required. In a normal company, I used to work for a normal company, a decision of that nature might take a week, might take, you know, maybe a board call. Each of those 3 decisions took 2 months and massive amounts of management time that should have been invested in clubs and riders. It's a fundamental weakness of this system. I keep forgetting what that box is for, so I'm going to skip it. This is the new system that we're proposing. It's a unified entity serving clubs and members through local offices in every state and territory. We didn't put the and territory in, guys, we need to. Local offices in every state and territory. It's an improved business model. Again, without the 19 boxes, there's no disincentive to sharing knowledge and effort through all of the employees of the entity. It's sad to say, but that disincentive exists today. And that results in lower outcomes for our members. It's crazy. It also, you know, results in worse outcomes for the employees, so it doesn't make any sense there either. But so what we're talking about is improving the business model so that we can offer better services to clubs and members throughout the country. Invest more into cycling. You know, the various comments on social media and stuff about CA being broke or insolvent or whatever. Yes, we've got some debt. That was on the minds of BMX and mountain bike from the very first time we discussed it. So we've been discussing it with Sport Australia as well, and securing the additional $2.5 million helps to address, or does it fully address and more that debt. It puts the system into a stronger and sustainable financial position. It positions us for the future, and it positions us for growth. We have opening net assets of over $5 million, but it positions us to capture the opportunities of tomorrow. You know, Dunk mentioned in his introduction, what are we going to do about e-bikes? You know, we need to be thinking about that now and positioning ourselves, and if we wait around, we'll lose. Some people say that, you know, sport's not about business, but, you know, we're competing for the attention of kids, we're competing for the attention of parents, we want volunteers, we want people involved. We are competing against better capitalised big sports, NRL, AFL, round ball football, cricket, you name it. And if the Olympic sports, you know, our kinds of sports don't get our act together, we just get steamrolled. So this proposal is about preserving our strengths. So the stuff that we do well, we want to hang on to, but position ourselves to grow. A lot of this stuff we've talked about, but it's important. It's about filling in those white space areas that I described so that we can position the sport for the future, whether that's infrastructure, advocacy, member services, pathways for people who want to reach higher levels on the competitive side, and then just making the sport more easy to deal with. So one license, cheaper prices, getting better outcomes with government funding. And then, of course, you know, looking after our history and heritage, because it is important where we came from. And this is not about forgetting the past. It's about honouring that past, but positioning ourselves for the future. That's the end of my bit. So I look forward to your questions later on. Thanks.
Evening. For those who don't know me, my name's Shane Coppin. I'm CEO with Mountain Bike Australia and been in this role for nearly 6 years. And I just want to say a couple of things before I start on this section. And this whole experience of the One Cycling, the AusCycling project for me has been one, you know, really of wonderment, because I've got an opportunity to learn from other disciplines and to understand how big, how broad, how capable and the capacity that our sport collectively has for the benefit of all. So when I go through this presentation, and I've said this a few times, I just ask that when you consider the proposal that we're putting forward, look at it with an open mind on the basis of what we're trying to do is change the opportunities for cycling and for riders as a whole, and consider that what it might look like in 5, 10, 15 or 25 years. And then when you think about that, compare that back to what we might look like if we don't make any change. What does the status quo look like? Are we able, you know, when there's 2.5 million to 4 million people ride a bike in this country, are we able to get to a membership base of 250,000 plus? How do we get to become a sustainable sport without the need for all the government funding, and allow the government funding and sponsorship to direct new programs and things like that? When I look at it, what we're asking ourselves to do collectively as 19 organisations is make an investment into our future. And the investment is a financial investment, a membership investment so that we can grow a voice, and the last one is an investment of our workforce. There's not 19 tables in this room, so we don't even make up the 19 organisations. If we come together, we can potentially have a significant workforce working for the benefit of riders. So AusCycling governance has been developed with a lot of time spent on working out how do we ensure that we protect and preserve and create an organisation that is, one, professional, and two, actually can represent the needs of all the riders and all the disciplines and all the states and groups involved. There'll be a nominations committee We've already got those initial committee members allocated: Linda Evans from cycling, Sharon Willoughby from BMX, and Peter McKendry from mountain bike, and there'll be another independent added to that group. There'll be a transition AusCycling board. Initially 12 directors, 3 representing each of the disciplines. So 3 from mountain bike, 3 from BMX, and 3 from road and track. And 3 independent directors who will be appointed by the board, but they'll be done in conjunction with Sport Australia. Following 3 years of a transition board, we'll move to a, apologies for that. On the transition board, we already have the 3 chairs of the NSOs. They will fill one of the 3 representative roles from the disciplines. So Darren from BMX, Lee from mountain bike, and Duncan from road and track. So that means there's 6 representatives still to come from within the sport to form the transition board. Okay, so we'll move to ownership. And I think this one is something that is really important and something that is really unique about this proposal. So AusCycling is to be owned by the clubs. So it's to be owned by you. It's to be owned by the clubs, and you will have you are the direct people and stakeholders of this new organisation. There's over 500 clubs in Australia. You will be the owners. You will have a say on that board of what they do and what they don't do. You will be the people they will be directly responsible to. So it's quite a big shift. There'll be a new CEO appointed to AusCycling, and that's something that myself and my 2 colleagues agree that this organisation needs someone to come in without a history of our organisations to lead it and to take it on its journey into a new future. There'll be a number of subcommittees that will be established by the board from time to time that needs to be there to help it do its job. So we'll have a range of state and territory advisory councils. So this is an initiative to allow states and disciplines within each of those states to still have a voice within the AusCycling model of governance. These are very important committees, and they've come out of the consultation that we've had with a number of the workshops that we've already held. So in the initial instance, each state and territory will have one of these. There'll be 9 representatives of this, 3 from road and track, 3 from BMX, 3 from mountain bike. And they will work in an advisory capacity and work directly with the state general manager of AusCycling and the CEO. And from these committees, there'll be a chair appointed from within, and the chair of those committees will then sit on a national advisory committee. And I'll go to a slide next. These committees will work and advise, and these are just some of the areas, and I'm sure as these progress, many more will be added, but they'll advise on things like state team selection, discipline insights, volunteer recognition, important one around history, and guidance on transition matters. But there'll be many more as the organisation progresses. So if you look at the structure of AusCycling around commissions and state advisory, this is where these state advisory commissions are. They have a direct feed into the state or local office, and then along here the individual, God, I got a shaky hand. The individuals come up to form the National Advisory Council, so that's the chairs of each of those, so there'll be 8 on there. And the chair of that council, as elected from within, the collective group from here, will then sit on the board of AusCycling. From there, then you have your chief executive. These are the pillars that we've developed for the operations of AusCycling. Pathways sits parallel to high performance number, and then there's a range of different commissions or working groups to support the management structure throughout the organisation. So forming the transition board, there is a nominations committee, as I mentioned. There are 12 initial spots on that board. 3 have been allocated, and then there's 6 to still be appointed from within the sport, 2 more from each of the disciplines, and then 3 independents. Ultimately, the board is targeting a skill set or a skills board, but certainly there'll be significant representation from the various disciplines, states and sport. The chair of the National Advisory Council will sit on the board, as I mentioned before, and all nominations will go through the nominations committee. So this slide here, when we've worked to develop the AusCycling model, we've looked at it and we've said we really need to establish a model and an organisation that is built from the rider up, from people who ride bikes, not from the top down, not from a board, but it's got to be focused and it's got to be driven, and this is the core engine of the whole organisation: riders, members, clubs. So this is what we would call an inverted model of our organisational structure. And if you look here, these are the state and territory offices that we refer to, one obviously in every state or region. And the role of those offices hasn't really going to shift from what it does today. But what we're endeavouring to do, and what we will do through this new structure, is provide them with the resources and access to resources to deliver outcomes that are important to directly members and clubs. So if you consider this from a structural viewpoint, this national office, which works here and here, is the supporting office to allow the state offices to directly deliver tangible benefits back to members and clubs in the area of events, advocacy, development, education, community engagement, whatever that need be. This is what this office and this structure is about to do. In here, we have a number of corporate services around membership, and I think Duncan touched on that earlier about trying to build some of the best membership services we can. And all this is about looking after the governance and corporate services and responsibilities. What we want to do, obviously, through the one licence, is provide a team of champions in the membership area, but then we're supporting all these champions at local area with national office support. And then obviously we drop down to the board and management level. No? Can you make it work? Oh. Apologies for that. Okay, so we've gone through at a top level what an AusCycling office or local office would look at, and the split of division of real functions around the national and the state office or territory offices. So if you have a look through this list, there's obviously local office management, stakeholder and partner relationships. This is a shared responsibility. So when we talk about a shared responsibility, we see the local office driving much of this, but they have a head office who can support them. If you need to have a commercial partnership agreement done up because you're looking at something local, don't spend your time doing it. Let a national office support you with that. They've got access to the data. They can develop that material for you and then work with you to gain that partnership. So that's one example. And then we look through all these different areas, and this list won't be exhaustive, but it's a high-level example of what we see will happen. Currently around the NSOs and the SSOs, we have a workforce approximately 82 staff combined, with a local workforce in state offices of around 42. That number might change every day, but that's about where it is right now. Under the initial proposal for AusCycling, there are many things that we are not capable of doing, such as integrity, diversity, inclusion, advocacy, lobbying, and there's a few others that we'll come to. But what we're proposing is in the new structure that we will see an increase in staff, but that increase will be at the local office. And when the proposal around all of this was considered and people said this is all about savings and efficiencies and saving money and all that, it has been about that. But what it's been about is reallocating that money back into providing more workforce and outcomes back at the local offices to deliver better outcomes to those people we looked at the top, which is the members and riders and those people who want to ride a bike. This slide just reflects, there's been quite a bit of questioning and comments about how does all the funding work? You know, we're funded by a state government. What happens to that? That'll go to the national office. Will that be lost? Where does it go? So this slide gives you an idea of the main areas where the organisations today gain their income. Membership fees, grants, in the national sense, but also grants at the local level, sponsors at local, sponsors at state, event-related and other revenues. They all go into AusCycling, but then they all come straight back out. 100% of grant monies back out into the state. Local sponsor support, straight back out to the state. Within the AusCycling model, all the local office expenditure is met. Expenditure to achieve outcomes that have been agreed to, and programs and events that have been developed in conjunction with state general managers and the state advisory bodies with the management of AusCycling, all get determined into budgets and all come back out through this process. And then obviously there's an element of monies that go into supporting the national office. We move to proportional club voting model. I mentioned earlier that AusCycling is a change under the current model, which you saw earlier on a slide, where the national bodies, in the case of road and track and BMX, are owned by the states. The AusCycling model, or the AusCycling business, is owned directly by the clubs. So the clubs will hold the vote on the organisation. They'll be the core group that do it. We looked at many, numerous, and multiple variants of how to establish a voting model that we thought would be fair and equitable. For those who don't know, MTBA's membership or individual voting. So there's many variants out there that we had to try and consider. So we came up with this model that is scaled votes based on club membership size with a diminishing marginal votes as you go through. And if you have a look at, in simple terms, really it looks at the size of your club based on member numbers at a date, and then you're allocated a number of votes relative to that member number. And so if you have a look, this is an example, 140 up to 149, so you got 100 to 149, your club will have 5 votes. You have to vote them in block, but you have 5 votes. And that there, that orange box there, is where the balance of power in all the clubs, the 500 odd clubs that exist today, that is where the balance of power. We looked at alternatives. There's clubs that might have 800 plus members. We looked at alternatives and said 1 vote per member. It's pretty tough on a club that's got 10 members or 20 members. It just doesn't work. And in fairness, a number of the large clubs have come back to us and said, we believe in this model because it creates more fairness and equality amongst the whole group. So when we look at the voting allocation based on what current memberships for the disciplines look like, you can see the number of clubs, number of members, and the percentage of votes. So they're pretty close. This model is pretty close. And then if you have a look based on state, same, it's relatively close to the proportion of members in each area. I might keep moving, just conscious of time to give you all a chance to ask questions. So who votes? So in order to facilitate and get to AusCycling requires, in MTBA's case, individual members to vote. You'll be asked to vote at our upcoming AGM in November. So individual members in mountain bike will be asked to vote. In the CA and BMX states and territories, it's a different process. So in those cases, the individual state bodies will hold either an AGM or an SDM, and other than ACT, which is individual members, you'll be asked to vote as clubs on whether you would like to see AusCycling come into place. And from that, then you'll see the state and territory offices, organisations come together and vote. And I guess it's going to be an EGM or an AGM for both CA and BMX to determine whether the NSO moves across into that AusCycling model. So these are estimated dates or suggested dates based on, I guess someone read all the constitutions and looked at the notice periods and everything like that. We are conscious of the fast time frame that we're trying to work to. There's a number of reasons for that. Boards change, and I think probably one of the more relevant reasons that we need to continue to push this process is that whilst this is in place, our sports are all trying to work out what the next step is, what the future is. We need to bring some certainty to our organisations for what our future looks like. Are we going to stay in the status quo for the next however many years, or are we going to take a leap of faith and try and move forward into a bold new world? And I think we've got a number of staff who are working with all these organisations wondering what their future means. So we're very conscious of that, and that's why we're working to a time frame that's quite accelerated. And we hope to have an outcome by the end of the year. We understand that from there, transition will take another 12 to 18 months to really bring and bed down into fruition. And that will be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. I'll just take you quickly through some of the implementation information around this process, and then we can probably move on to asking you questions. But just for those of you that don't know me, my name is Martin Shaw. I'm the CEO of BMX Australia, and over the last 18 months it's been really great to have been working with Shane and Steve, especially as CEOs, but also on a wider scale, the steering committee and Mountain Bike Australia and Cycling Australia. One of the great things about it has been that in the past, probably everybody in the room knows that relationships have been a little bit strained between these organisations. It's been fantastic over the last 18 months to be involved in this process and see what a honest and open and respectful conversation it's been. It really has been a case of each of the organisations coming in and just looking at what we believe to be the best thing for all cyclists moving forward. And that's been really refreshing. It's been a significant change from the past. It's this sort of view of things, of putting aside historical differences and looking to the future that makes these sort of transitions and these sort of opportunities available. So it's been fantastic working with everybody, and hopefully we can make the most of that goodwill. In terms of the legal process, there's been quite a number of questions about that, and Shane touched on it in terms of there's a two-stage process to it where the clubs vote at a state level, and then there's a similar vote at a national level. So if we start looking at what the vote or what the clubs will be voting on at a state level, there will be a number of resolutions that will be put to the members. Okay, so we want to be really clear about this. This is not something that can be dictated to from above by the national associations. This will happen if the members approve it. And the members obviously have their say in it. So these resolutions will be put to state and territory general meetings. The first of those is to approve the AusCycling Constitution. So there's a draft constitution out there on the website at the moment. And obviously, if the members decide to approve this, they need to know what that constitution is. It's out there, and you'll have an opportunity to read it and an opportunity at a general meeting to vote for it. The second thing is that there'll be a resolution put to transfer all of the business and assets from the state and territory associations to AusCycling. Okay, so once again, if this goes ahead, this is a conscious decision that is made by the members and approved by the members. Okay, there's lots of discussion out there around, national associations taking money from the states. We can't do it. Right? We want to be really open and honest with you. We can't take your money. The only way that would happen was if the members actually approved it, because they want to be part of this journey. They want to be part of this organisation. So it's a conscious decision of members to approve the transfer of assets. And the third one is to approve the voluntary cancellation of the entity. So in deciding to be part of this process and part of this great new organisation, you would be deciding to close down your state association. So the resolutions are conditional. Okay, so they only become effective once those similar resolutions are passed at a national level. So there's no problems with a state supporting this process and feeling like, oh, if we support it but others don't, we're stuck. We've got no state organisation. So if you want to support it, which we hope you do, feel free to support it because it's conditional on this happening at a national level as well. We've also got to say that the special resolution, they require 75% approval. So we've got to get 75% of the member clubs, 75% of the members in mountain bike's case approving that. Once that happens at a state level, then the states would carry that vote forward to the national level, and there'd be matching resolutions put forward to a NSO general meeting. After that, when this all goes ahead, there'd then be transfer agreements entered into with the relevant state associations around transfer of assets, novating existing contracts. All the contracts and agreements that are existing at a state level will be carried forward and will be honoured in full. So that's the legal process. If we look at what some of the implications of a no vote are, we don't really like to concentrate on this too much. We prefer to look at what the positives of this opportunity are. And the implications really of a no vote are just the lost opportunities. Okay, you're not going to be losing anything at club level that you're doing at the moment. You're not going to be losing anything at state level that you're doing at the moment. All the programs you run, all the events that you conduct, they will continue into the future. Really what we're losing is lost opportunities. And they're the things that we've spoken about. No single licence, the licence increase, the lost efficiencies will remain, the duplication will remain. We won't have people with advocacy and infrastructure teams out there trying to do their best for clubs, trying to get infrastructure. We won't be able to lobby for rider safety. We won't be able to capture really significant sponsorships for the sport. We're certainly not going to be taken seriously by government in any massive way. We're still going to be 19 different organisations, and we're still going to be really easy to ignore. The financial capacity will still be $2.5 million weaker than it would be if we supported it. Limited career paths for staff, and the fragmentation and the confusion will remain. So it's a big, scary process, and we've said that. But we really need to, when we're looking at it, understand not only what does this offer us, but we also need to think about, if we don't support this, what are those opportunities that we lose? In terms of the timetable, there's been a lot of work done on this over the last 18 months, but it's really kicked up. In the last few months, there's been discipline workshops held with each of the state associations. So BMX held a discipline workshop where we called in our state association representatives. Cycling did the same thing. Mountain bike did a similar thing by calling in various club representatives. And we went through the proposal and got their feedback, and took that feedback and incorporated it into the next iteration of the model. We then held a combined discipline workshop where we brought those same representatives into the room all at the same time. So there were the representatives from BMX, the representatives from cycling, and the representatives from mountain bike. And once again went through the proposal. We took them through the changes that we'd made to the model as a result of their feedback, and got a little bit more information back from them. More issues to consider, more issues to raise. So that was really positive. We had a lot of great discussion, a lot of honest discussion about it, and it's got us to the stage we are today, where we're now getting out and around the country, meeting with people like yourselves, club representatives, interested members who want to find out more about what AusCycling has to offer. Now this is the third of the roadshows. We've done Adelaide and Darwin. We've got them over the next 2 weeks as well. all around the country, and finishing off with one up in Mackay in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll take the information and the feedback we get from tonight, and I'm sure you've all got lots of questions and lots of comments to make. We'll take that and continue feeding that into the model and seeing how we can make it better, how we can make it stronger. From there, as Shane mentioned, we're looking at getting voting done by November, and then once voting's been done, if the members approve it, we get to then get into a detailed implementation planning stage. So we get a lot of questions at the moment about, we want to see detailed planning of how this is going to be implemented. And there's work being done on that, and a lot of work especially around workforce and those areas. But to be honest, the Steerco has made a decision that the amount of work that goes into that detailed implementation planning is so large that we need to get an indication that the members actually want it. Because we could bury ourselves for goodness knows how long, putting all that together before there's a decision made whether people think that this is a good idea. And all we'd be doing is making it harder for us to run our businesses on a day-to-day level. Once we get through that implementation planning stage, we'll then look into getting AusCycling operational, which we think can be happening in Q2 2020. Okay, so while the vote may take place in November, December this year, it's not a case that the day after we're flicking the switch and everything's going to be AusCycling. There's a lot of work that needs to be done before then, and that will take us a period of time. If we look at the transition approach, it's probably a few things. Day one, we think it's going to feel like day -1. Not much is going to change. We're not going to be having $1 million sponsorships walking in on day one, but at the same time, what you're doing at your club is not going to change. The things you're doing now, keep on doing them, because we love the work that you're doing, all the stuff that's being done at club level, and that will continue. We will not be putting a stop to any of that sort of stuff. It will be the same, and hopefully what we get is over time, at club level, you guys begin to understand, and you're getting greater support. Greater support from your local office, greater support from your national office. One of the important things is the quality of the outcome trumps the speed of the implementation. So this will be a very big job. And we don't want to rush that transition, and we don't want to rush the implementation of it. So if it takes us a little bit longer to go through that planning process, then we're going to go through the planning process. And we'll take the extra time to make sure that when it's introduced, we have that situation where day one feels like day -1. Where you guys actually out in clubland feel not much has changed. Maybe I'm getting a better support from the state and national offices, but not much has changed. It'll just keep going. Very important for us is that the state and territory leaders co-design the local transition. Okay, we've got the state advisory boards, we've got the local offices. We saw the model where really the local office was there to service the clubs and the members, and the national office was there to support the local office. Very, very important to us, and I know that there's been some comments out there about this process will close down state offices, or resources will get taken elsewhere. Fundamental to what we are trying to do with this proposal is to resource state offices to be able to provide support that is needed for clubs and members. So they take a fundamental position in this process. And in this transition, we will be relying very heavily on their input on how things work at a state level and a local level. Because every state works differently. Some of the disciplines work differently. And there's not going to be a cookie-cutter approach in transition. So we will be leaning on the state and territory leaders to co-design their transition and to lead their transition. And certainly, throughout the change, everyone will be highly respected. One of the things that we've spoken about is that this is about all riders. Doesn't matter why they ride. And it doesn't matter what they ride. And it doesn't matter where they ride. They can be a BMXer riding in Sydney, or they can be somebody that rides to work in Cairns. All these people are the fundamental reason for the organisation to exist, to support them, to make their experience riding a bike an enjoyable one, and one that they want to be passionate about, and one that they really want to be a leader of in their local community for why riding a bike is fantastic. And we can only do that if we respect everyone, if we respect every discipline, if we respect every state, every territory, every club. So that's a very important part of what we're doing. And if we get all that right, then hopefully we get something really fantastic, where we get an AusCycling that has more resources directed to club and member services, facilitates better commercial outcomes, direct investment in infrastructure, career pathways, national footprint, bike ed program, volunteer recognition program, financial strength, one race licence and one voice for cycling. And if we have an organisation that's delivering all that, it's a pretty powerful organisation. And it's one that I think any member would be proud to be a member of. And it'll be one that's giving back to the members, giving back to the clubs. So that's the plan. If we get that, we can end up with something fantastic.
Thanks, Martin. We will get into some questions in just a moment. Also, for those that are watching online around Australia or around the world, we will have the capability of answering some of your questions as well. So thanks for the input that we've had, actually, from all of the people that have been online in the first couple of roadshows that we have already presented. I did say that last slide, which showed all the opportunities. I couldn't help but be that nerdy cyclist that looked at it and thought the spokes just didn't quite look right. It was a little bit uneven. Maybe we can work on that and just get the spokes right. Martin did say in there that AusCycling may seem like a big, scary process. But what really scares me is if we continue to do the same thing and expect a different outcome. This, for me, really does present some great opportunities for growth within all of our disciplines, and I personally am very excited about it. Happy to throw it out to the room now. Who wants to go first and ask the first question? We do have the microphone, so we'll bring the microphone across to you, just for the benefit of everybody that in the room and at home. Just try and hold the microphone right up nice and close to your lips, please, so that they can hear us at home and we can get a better idea of what the question is.
Hi. Mine's about the memberships, and it's been a pretty hot topic on the forums. But want to know a couple of things. Firstly, are they going to continue with day licences? And I've forgotten the second one already. So yeah, start with that one.
What's your name, sorry?
Michelle.
Michelle, thank you.
Hi, Michelle. Probably the simple answer really is yes. Day licences will continue.
Okay, so on that, because I know from a racing perspective, where's the benefit in actually getting a licence if paying for the annual license if I can just get one when I feel like racing?
I guess that becomes a choice around your economics, what you wish to do. For $250, depends how many times you race. Most day licenses cost in amongst that $35 per race or per ride. So at some point, I guess the economic value is a question that you will make. But what we're trying to do through this model is make a very affordable model for those people who want to ride and race all the time, and also allow an opportunity for those people who want to ride occasionally to still be able to do that through the day licence mechanism.
Thanks, Michelle.
Hi. Thanks. Andy Moore, President of Balmoral Cycling Club. At the moment, if you want to join a road or track cycling club, you go to the CA website and you tick the boxes to which club you want to join. You do that on the basis of word of mouth or direct connection with the club, whatever club you feel you affiliate with. In a city like Brisbane, there's multiple clubs and we're all working quite well. My question relates to your structure of fees there. You had one licence and you said that you can then have a club fee whether you join Road Track Club A or Mountain Biking Club Track, Club B. My question is, there's potential for a whole raft of fee structures, and so my concern is that, well, I can join Road Club A for $50, or I can join Road Club B in the two suburbs over. They're charging $150 for their club fee, or the mountain bike club in the next suburb, it's only $75 for a club fee. How are the clubs expected to set that fee? One model could be that whether you're a BMX club, a mountain bike club, a road club, it's the same fee across the board, across the country, so that that doesn't come into the decision making as to which club or which discipline you take out a club fee for and which club you join. Just wondering what's the thought process on how that will play out.
Yeah, look, that question's been coming up quite a lot, and I think it's one that ultimately for us, we've looked at the viewpoint that most people join clubs for various reasons. One, they want to support a community or support a cause that club does, or the benefits that it offers to juniors, or the racing component. And we've had discussions around whether we look to set a standard fee. And I think we wanted to take an approach at this stage. We don't want to sit here and mandate that every club will charge the same. I think in some ways that's a club's choice of how they do that. We know of models where some clubs will reward their members by giving them cheaper entry fees and things like that, or cheaper access to other programs that they might do, or even offered free membership if you're willing to volunteer. So had we taken the approach, I'm sure, and said, right, well, the membership is going to be $275, and of that $275, every club gets $25, I'm sure the social media commentary right now might be quite militant. We don't want to impose that, but obviously if that is something that comes out of these forums that people wish us to look at as a standardised fee across clubs, certainly that is something that should be driven from within the communities at large and all those clubs. What will work best for you? But we don't want to impose that. But I think from our viewpoint, we understand that different clubs charge differently. I know of one mountain bike club that doesn't want members and charges $10,000 to join. They simply have their purpose, and I think this becomes something that clubs need to consider what membership fees mean. And I don't think, and I hope certainly, that people don't choose other options and don't continue to support the clubs that do things for them. What we do hope, by opening the door and allowing in some disciplines where you can only join one club today, that we see those people able to join more clubs and contribute in other ways to those communities and those clubs, and be able to access more opportunities to ride their bike.
Is that helpful, Andy? Yep, great.
Mark Lillicrap's my name. So looking at the model that you've got, where your revenue that you believe is going to come from, in those three main pillars that I looked at, is the recreational licences, advocacy that the governments will find some funding and some corporates will find some funding. If the licensing fees are actually less income, you're putting on more employees, and if there is no increased recreational riders, you don't get government funding, where's the revenue going to come from?
Thanks for the question. I suppose at the start of the formation of the entity, we're already, the system is $2.5 million net better off than it is today. So that's part of, we're investing some of that in generating the growth.
Is that $2.5 million guaranteed? Because in the presentation it said, it didn't say it was guaranteed. Assistant to secure.
I might ask my very good friend from Sport Australia to address that question.
So this is Matt from representing Sport Australia.
G'day everyone, Mark was it? Yes. Thanks for the question, Mark. Look, I think the fact that we're here today and that we've been supporting the process for the best part of 18 months demonstrates our commitment to this. What we have said is that if AusCycling is formed, we're committed to making sure that is successful. So if AusCycling is formed, if all the entities that are going into AusCycling are contributing their assets to it, then we are committing to make that successful. What we have said is that if that's formed, we will provide assistance to provide that. The commitment for that is that we are working through it. It is absolutely something that we want to support the sport to be successful into the future. So that's something that we have committed to assist the sport to do.
Still not guaranteed.
If AusCycling is formed, as we've said, and the entities contributing to that come into it, then we're committed to making sure that it is a successful entity.
On the 2.5, I'm one of the suckers that'll probably end up on the board. Sport Australia put a whole lot of work into this. We put a whole lot of work into this. Of the Olympic sports, a couple have tried to get down the road. Golf got part of the way, got halfway there. Sailing's tried, but no one's pulled off all of this. I spoke to the Treasurer about it Frydenberg on Tuesday, spoke to the Sports Minister about it yesterday. Serious people are focused on it, and they know what a sensible balance sheet looks like, and there's no way, day one, the thing's going to be set up undercapitalised. It's going to be set up to succeed. Is it 2.5? I think it will be, but I'm really comfortable that day one there'll be enough in the kick for the thing to be stable and well capitalised, because all these organisations have been running negative working capital cycles for too long. Then on the other revenue side, over the last 18 months, people come knocking and you see opportunities. I think Steve told the Mattel story before. Mattel came and said, we've got X million dollars because all the kids are playing on phones, not playing with our Barbies anymore. We've missed that boat a little bit. How do we sponsor all kids 5 to 11 who ride bikes in Australia? And the answer is, Steve gave the answer. You've got to organise a conference call for 19 organisations. Got to work out how to divide the revenue. No one collates the data. We're just not investment grade. Unilever came a while ago and said, how do we sponsor all the women's cycling groups in Australia? Like, have you got one deck of slides that describes who they are, what they do, where they ride? One of our feminine hygiene products, can they sponsor all the women's cycling groups in Australia? I had a conversation with the director of Woolies early this year who said, why isn't there a cycling version of AusKick? We'd love to sponsor that. NABA into AusKick, why can't you roll up all the bike ed programs and we'll bring in Big W and you get a backpack and a 50% off a bike and blah, 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 blah. It just doesn't exist. I think the reality, if you put all this together, I'm really optimistic. It'll be a very financially healthy joint.
Hi. Sorry, my name is Mark Vaughan. I'm from the Pine Rivers BMX Club. I just had some questions in terms of the financials moving forward as well on the 62-page document that was released. The membership income seems to rely upon an increase of about 6% membership increase across the disciplines. From the various annual reports, there seems to be a decrease over 17-18. So how do we capitalise that to a 6% increase to guarantee the income? I think Cycling Australia had about 5,000 dip from 16 to 19. BMX had from 17 to 19 about 3,600 less, and mountain bike did increase. So overall, it's about a 10% decrease in membership, but it's based on a 6% increase.
Yeah, so the 6% is made up of 3% volume growth and 3% price growth. So that's where that 6% comes from. So in terms of member numbers, the assumption is 3%. As you said, Shane's been growing faster than that. And a big part of the growth in Shane's numbers has been rec. We think with the pricing assumption that we have around our rec numbers that we should be able to grow, that 3% will be pretty conservative.
And sorry, when you say also pricing, does that mean the cheaper licences are going to go up?
Just like everything else in life, yes. By 3%.
Next, we've got another one down front here as well, or still just up behind there as well. Hold on to your question down here.
Yes, Barry Knight speaking. Look, underneath this model here, you're making assumption that you're handing the power back to the clubs. I'd like to know what actually constitutes a club going forward. It's sort of, I feel as though that this avenue of taking it back to the clubs as being open to virtually. If it's three old boys having an incorporated organisation that doesn't have any infrastructure whatsoever, they still have voting rights in this organisation, or it opens it up to clubs splitting into myriad of different clubs to get extra voting rights. What actually is the constitutes a club in this format going forward?
Look, we've had a look at that. There were a number of criteria that had to be met, and they weren't extensive. It needs to be an incorporated body, so an incorporated association, or occasionally there's a club out there that's a company limited by guarantee. They needed to have a minimum number of members. I think we were looking at 10 members as a minimum. They needed to have a constitution that was obviously lodged with AusCycling and was consistent with the principles of AusCycling. And they needed to have I suppose their reason for being needed to be to support one aspect of cycling. So that can be, whether it's racing, recreational, in mountain bikes case, there's clubs that are established to support trails and trail development. So we didn't want to exclude groups that were making a significant contribution to an aspect of cycling. So, as long as you're supporting cycling, you're an incorporated association, you've got a constitution and the minimum number of members, then you would be considered a club.
Second part of my question is there's no mention in the presentation to Bicycle New South Wales, Amy Gillett Foundation. Your presentation is about a one cycling organisation, yet you've still got these two organisations that are actually will be bigger than AusCycle when it's all put together. So basically, also the other point that that was missed in the presentation, there was no mention of where the pro teams actually sit in this organisational structure, like Green Edge and so on.
Okay, I mean, in terms of the pro teams, Barry, they don't sit within this structure, just the same way that they don't sit within it today. In terms of the rec bodies, again, this is a question we've had every meeting so far. Basically, the answer is it's hard enough to get 19 bodies in a room, let alone 35 or whatever the number is, because there's not just Network and BQ and BNSW and BSA and all the other ones. As you rightly mentioned, there's Amy Gillett and there's a bunch of others. And there's also the vets on the road and track side. the model is set up to facilitate those ones coming along. Again, advocacy is an important part of what we want to do within AusCycling, but if we can achieve that advocacy function without recruiting and effectively creating another voice, that's what we want to do. So, again, what we'd like to do is concentrate the voice and strengthen the voice of cycling in the community, not create another small voice. So, we won't say who, but we've already had some approaches from some of the advocacy bodies, and they're very interested in what we're doing.
Thanks, Barry. And I've got a question down the front here.
Thank you. Grant Cracknell's my name. I just wanted to say that I'm excited in a way, probably a little bit naive, but excited to think that there might be more events, more races, more support, more advocacy, a stronger, more enjoyable place in Australia for cycling. I think that's got to be the way that it goes. And a place where we can find one spot to log on to enter races, one spot to have a card so you know your handicap so you don't turn up and get a ridiculous handicap at a handicap race. There's got to be a way of stratifying this and making this actually work. I suppose my question is a fairly open one in saying I'd be interested for either the boards or the executive officers to give their thoughts on what is the one biggest challenge that they each see as this not working. What's the thing that's going to stop this working and achieving those outcomes?
Dunk's up for a challenge always.
I think it's the big bureaucracy identity issue. That there are lots of, and Steve made the point earlier, this is about continuing to do the things we do well today and then filling in the space, the long list of things we're not doing well as a system. And there are lots of people in all the organisations doing really good work. And if you're running a club, you look upstairs and you see Cycling Queensland or Cycling Victoria and then Cycling Australia above it or similar in BMX, and you don't really see what's happening at a governance level. It's all quite opaque, but there's really good work happening at the coalface. And if you create one governance framework, you've got to make sure you don't kill the really good things that are happening at the coalface, the volunteers, the clubs, the racing, the people who are working tirelessly and delivering good stuff, keeping that alive, and then filling in the white space, building a club services team, building a policy team, writing infrastructure policy, building a national bike ed program. So it's doing both of those things, or three things: merging all the governance, nurturing and looking after the good things that are happening today, and then building on the side, or filling out the white space of the stuff we're not doing. And all that sounds easy. You can whack it up in PowerPoint. But I'm a career operator. I've run businesses for private equity firms my whole life, and execution's an art. And most mergers fail. And this isn't a merger, this is a new entity, but running it really well to do those three things. And then the identity thing. I don't want it to become grey and beige. These are all proud organisations with a lot of history. Track carnivals in Tassie, and they're iconic races and iconic events and history with archives and people that have been involved in it for hundreds of years. I don't want that to just become all beige and homogenised. But that's execution's an art.
The only other thing I would add is, in terms of a risk, is vote risk. So if you like it, vote for it. Encourage your clubs. If you're a mountain biker, vote yourself. It's important.
You mind if I add to that? Is that all right? Just to your question, what is some of the risks of it not getting up? For me, it's lack of education and just not understanding what it is. And I'm getting it already. I put a post online yesterday, and it was 90% very positive. And then I still had a few people talking about, Cycling Australia from 25 years ago. Well, I can talk about the Australian Cycling Federation from 35 years ago if you want, but none of those people are involved in the administration of what this project is in the last couple of years and what it's going to be. So I guess it's educating ourselves as to what the benefits are, the opportunities that it is for all of the disciplines within all of the wheeled sports, and then actually speaking that word, letting everybody else know if they haven't really come across it yet, why we should be doing this, why it's going to benefit all of us, and don't sit on things that happened 5, 10, 25 years ago. Let's move forward. So education and understanding for me is perhaps the absolute number one to make sure that we do get a yes vote.
Yeah, g'day guys, I'm Trent from Nerang BMX Club. I come in tonight with an open mind, wanting to listen, obviously you guys, to listen, to hear the concept, and at the moment I've got more questions than I've actually had answered. So just one thing I want to know, you guys have been together for 18 months talking about the concept. Why is it that we only have 3 months and a first meeting tonight to actually make a decision and vote?
I haven't actually been in it for 18 months. However, I'd say that during that time, there's been some changes. So every time the new boards, we get new members, new directors, those conversations have had to start again. So there's been a little bit of turnover in that time. I'm one of those. So there was a director prior to myself and chair for MTBA. And there was also a different one for BMX. So Steve and Duncan have been there. I would say the early conversations, from what I understand, were very adversarial. It seemed like a CA takeover. So they weren't pleasant conversations, and I'll pass that on to some of the others who were there. So we say we've been in discussions for 18 months. We came together as a team in about April this year and decided that we had a vision that we would put something together. So we've been working very hard on top of our day jobs, on top of our volunteer jobs since April. But 18 months has been the conversations to sort of say, should we get together? What does the future of cycling look like? So it hasn't been a total detailed conversations in 18 months. I don't know if anyone wants to add to those. Shane was there.
So, given that I've sat probably here for the longest for the last 6 years, the relationships over a majority of that wouldn't have enabled an opportunity to do what we're doing now, to actually have these discussions. And I think when the real catalyst to this came back in late 2016, when Martin and I and our respective chairs at the time went to Sport Australia and said the current model is not working. We cannot continue to go the way we are. We are not getting the outcomes and benefits for our members, for our sport, and we were having difficulties obviously with Cycling Australia at the time. From that then there became more discussions with Sport Australia about how we could progress, what we could do, how we could try and improve this, and all that time it was with a CA that would not open the door and talk to us. They actually wanted to keep us where we were. And through the years we got to a point where the CA leadership changed, and that enabled us to have a new dialogue with a new group of leaders and a new group of management who were more open to to reversing the past. They admitted that there was difficulties in the past, and we were able to firstly just sit in a room and talk without, going through and just fighting with hatchets and things like that. And we got to a point where after a period of time we engaged EY to look at what we could do to make the sport better. That process took a period of time. We then had to digest that, and at the conclusion of last year and the start of this year is when we really started to sit down and say, how can we make this better? Now, during that period, as I understand it, a number of state associations were kept informed, or that there was discussions and there was progress. But we needed to go through and work out collectively ourselves how we could bring together 3 organisations and make something that could be a really tangible and operating and a model that could work. And so it's taken us that time to get to here, and here we are. And as soon as we were able to present something that we believed was workable and tangible and would deliver the outcomes to the benefits of members, we're now presenting it.
My version of that answer is I called Darren's predecessor, Neil. I called Neil Cameron on a tram in February, March last year. Said, mate, can we get together? He and I caught up a month later. I said, why don't we get the 3 chairs and the 3 CEOs together? That happened in late March. We agreed there was enough interest in the idea that we'd all start to meet together monthly. So we met monthly through March, April, May, June, came to Sydney to BMX, came to Queensland to the mountain bike office. After 4 of those monthly meetings, the 6 of us, with a director from the Sports Commission, we decided there was enough meat on the bones. We needed to do a real body of work, but we needed a hand doing that. So we brought in EY to write a report on what they thought the right model would look like. They came up with this club-owned model. That took us to close to Christmas. During that time, we started going around seeing all our state boards. So Steve and I flew around the country and had dinner with all the state boards. Some of the states invited around a whole lot of clubs. You know, we had dinner in Adelaide with the board of South Australia and probably 10 or 15 of the club presidents around the time of the TDU. So we started to do that and started to meet the clubs, started to meet the state boards. So we did our first roadshow back then. Then all our state presidents said there's enough meat on the bones, advanced meat on the bones, go away for 3 or 4 months and do real work. That took us until mid-June, early July, and there's a monstrous amount of work behind this, like a really big amount of work. There's an org chart for every position, there are financial models, there's a couple of hundred FAQs, Q&A stuff that's on the website. And then we just jammed it into this, into fifth gear really, and have come on this road. We then, for the first time ever, had discipline workshops where we got all of road and track together in a room in Sydney, all of BMX together in a room in Sydney, all of mountain bike together in a room in Brisbane. That only finished 3 weeks ago, and we're here, and Christmas is coming, and change does happen. We've been through 3 presidents in WA over the last 18 months. New one change in Queensland, change in New South Wales, change in ACT. We're all volunteers. We've all got day jobs. People get burnt out, and every time someone changes, you've got to bring them along on the journey. So we're trying to find a balance that's not rushed, that reflects the sort of depth of work that's been done. Getting to this point from where we started 18 months ago has been hard, mate. And we can kick it down the road to Australia shuts down from the 15th of December to the 1st of Feb. We can kick it to Easter. Will it die on the vine between now and then, or do we just all go hard? My gut instinct is let's leave as much time to discuss this. We're now going around the country for 2 weeks, got day jobs, and then we're leaving sort of 8 to 10 weeks to talk about it and come back. And I get a call from a club president twice a day. So we've got 2 options: talk about it for another 2.5 months. It's not a long time, but it's enough to have a really informed, mature conversation and sort it out before Christmas or kick it at Easter. My sense is, it'll get an artery will get nicked between here and Easter if we kick it down the road to then. So we're not trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. We're just trying to do the best job we can.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, guys, and I really appreciate it. Obviously, I think everyone in the room here would say there's a lot of work gone into the presentation. I suppose from a club perspective, when we're the ones effectively that are going to be shaping the vote, I know in Queensland anyway, we've been very much out of the loop. We haven't had a lot of communication about it, despite questions being asked about it. But there's a lot of questions, like I suppose just for example, one question you put up there a few times is that Sports Australia is going to commit $2.5 million to the concept, which is cool. But is that to actually kick it off, or is that to erase the Cycling Australia debt? And then from what I've been told, BMX Australia's got a surplus. So what's going to happen with that money? Is that going to be rolled out to the clubs, or is that going to be merged into it as an asset? You guys have just offered a lot of questions. That's all. I just want.
Yeah. Look, in terms of what happens with the money that we have, as we've said in the process, the funds from state associations and the national associations will all get moved into AusCycling. So, whatever funds BMX Australia has, whatever funds BMX Queensland, Cycling Queensland, Mountain Bike Australia, they will all go into AusCycling to give the working capital and the financial base that the organisation needs to be successful.
Thanks, Trent.
I'm also comfortable that you've got a whole lot of questions. There's, I think 67 questions came in from BMX New South Wales. The state board's been going out collating questions. 82 or something came in from Cycling Victoria. Some came in from Queensland. If you go into the website and look at the FAQs, all those questions are being answered there. I reckon if you read all of that, you'll find you've got, I hope, half a dozen left. Fire them in, we'll answer them. And if you want any of our mobile phone numbers, just come and get them afterwards. Mine's 0409217176, and call us and we'll give you the answers.
You might regret that.
Hi, Ruben Coles from Sydney. Look, I'm sure I very much like what you're doing. I think it's probably a must, something of this sort moving forward, as I can't see the sports sustaining the way they are. I have been around BMX for probably 12 or 13 years now and seen the battle that there is there. I may have missed something through the presentation. I just want to see and get some feedback of what checks and balances are in place within the company structure to ensure that it doesn't become one-sided, i.e. some disciplines going backwards, others going forwards. I'm sure there is something there, but I'd like to hear it from yourselves. And then let's skip forward to a couple of years, 2022, because $2.5 million, my wife can spend that shopping. So seriously, when we have $10 to $50 million per annum, hopefully coming in, and I certainly hope this happens, or my God, we're in a lot of trouble. Where do you really see the sport going? You've obviously been spitballing between yourselves, and you've obviously got aspirations of what you want to see happening. Are we speaking with schools? Where are all the new people coming from? I really want to hear, what from the committee are their aspirations? Where exactly are we heading? I'm trying to get a take on where your heads are really at. Okay.
Okay, a couple of good questions. So the first one on the checks and balances, I'll work to address that one for you. So we mentioned the state advisory boards that are consisted of members from the community within local areas from the state. So there'll be, in essence, 9 people on each one of those. So, and they'll work directly in relationship with the local general manager of each office. But of that 9, they'll elect their own chair. They'll be independent, and they'll be representative of all the various communities, all the various disciplines. And as time goes, they will continue on, and they're being worked into constitutions and charters. The chairs of each of those, as we mentioned earlier, will then feed up and form the National Advisory Committee, and they will elect their own chair. So they will come together. So that you will have a state organisation lobbying for state needs. They'll come together. They'll be able to relay their needs and information into the National Advisory Committee, and the chair of the National Advisory Committee will sit as a direct member of the board and have an avenue directly into there. You also have state and territory general managers of the local offices, and if they're doing their job correctly, they'll be in tune with what the needs and the requirements and what people want within their local communities, and they should be driving that from their level up through the management into the national organisation. And when budgets are set and strategies are developed and operational plans are constructed, their role will be to drive that and seek the best outcomes for them. So you've got 2 avenues that should be working in synergy to keep the board in check and to keep the organisation in check, that it is delivering the needs and the wants of the communities that the people that they represent. Yeah, no silos is one of the comments.
Sorry. And then I guess so moving along, is there a check and balance so that, for example, all the managerial positions don't go one-sided to one discipline, for example, or is there something there? Is there a check to make sure that these positions do come from each discipline and continue into the future that way?
Yeah, look, probably to answer your question, we're building a functional service organisation. The workforce and organisational charts are devised around a service business. So if you imagine any national-based service business, the product that we're delivering is cycling or various disciplines of it or riding a bike. When we talk about creating a membership team, we don't want a membership team that just looks after mountain bike or membership team just looks after BMX. We want a team of champions who look after anyone, no matter what the bike they ride. When we talk about education and coaching, we want to centralise some of the administrative requirements through the national area to support, but then we will have people who can skill themselves in all the different disciplines, and our endeavour is to support them to then deliver those outcomes, educate people in the marketplace. But we do not want to create a workforce that is siloed, because the minute we do that, we put them in combat with each other. So it's about a functional business model, a service business model to benefit members.
Understood, thank you.
My other approach is I hope there comes a point in time when we stop looking in the revision mirror worrying about how we're going to protect, the history of track or how is BMX going to be represented, and stop worrying about what could go wrong and talk more about what could go right. The South Australian one I was talking about, track, back in the day when Scotty was starting to race track bikes, it was really healthy. I remember racing track bikes at a country town called Leongatha in Melbourne when I was a teenager, and there was 100 farm utes around the velodrome and people sitting on deck chairs and sausage sizzles and beers, and now just the grass is cracked, the concrete's cracked and there's grass. I don't know when there was a last track made at Leongatha, not in recent memory. I think that you go to a BMX meet. I hadn't been to a BMX meet for 10 years. I went to the Nationals in Bunbury early last year, and it's a community thing. Like, there's families there, everybody turns up, there's mum, dad, 3 kids, they spend a huge amount of money, they're spending more money on the BMX bikes than they are on holidays. Like most disciplines of cycling don't have that community, family feel that BMX has, and I think BMX probably knows how to fix track. I think if the people that have worked, that are driving BMX turned them out of track, they'll find a way to fix it. So I think we've also got to shift the narrative from how do we protect, what we are today, to how can we actually help each other.
And just the second side of that question. So we're 2 years in the future. What are your aspirations? Where do you see us? Where do you see us going? Where do you see the new members coming from? How is all that coming together?
I'm happy to answer that one. So obviously we spoke about a transitional board. So they will have equal representation from the 3 disciplines. A number of those people still yet to be nominated, but the vision certainly. So we don't have a strategic plan yet, but certainly the vision of that board and the intention of AusCycling and the financial modelling that's been done is absolutely increase participation. Yes, we have to be relevant for the high performance athletes and the pathways, but the opportunity is in the participation. So we're seeing tremendous growth in that space in mountain biking. It's families, it's regional areas. It's not just a particular person who stays with the with that particular discipline as well. So there's a lot of people that will transition from BMX, and then they don't actually at this stage don't always keep cycling. So we believe that it's possible for people to stay in the business of cycling. Starting out in BMX, perhaps they do try mountain biking and or road and track. So we see we were able to capture those people and keep those people. We have a number of programs which we will continue to do out into the regional areas. So people with disabilities, regional areas, women and children, and some of those remote areas. So they need to be included as well, and we're seeing great uptake of the female female classes. I know cycling have got a She Rides program. Just looking at Rats here, they do some great programs on Sundays. So they're capturing a lot of the parents who've got children who are out there cycling as well. So it's very much in that space. We as Steve said, 2.5 to 4 million people are riding bikes, depending on who you talk to. I think a large majority of us in here actually probably skew those numbers a bit because we probably all own about 3 or 4 each. So maybe we're all being counted a couple of times. Oh, someone's actually telling me they've got more. I'd like your budget, please. We're seeing some great performances in the high performance space as well. So we've got Australian athletes competing overseas, and they're competing really well. We will preserve that, and we will try and increase that as well. We believe by increasing that base, being able to get people, encourage people from all over the country as well, we'll see more of those people. So they're just as important, but it is very much participation.
Stephen from BMX. Yep. Just a question on the licensing structure that you have for 3 disciplines. Are you going to have a discipline or a licensing structure for families where you have multiple people like mum, dad, and 3 or 4 kids trying to race but working on a budget? Are you going to have a pricing structure for that, like a cap pricing structure? And second question is, with your marketing team, with kids being on devices, why aren't you pushing marketing into YouTube and apps and stuff like that for cycling?
Okay, so the first question, we haven't looked at we've looked at family discounts, and we've put together a fee structure there that we believe is actually a better value. It doesn't say that we wouldn't do it in the future, and some of that is around feedback. If we get enough feedback and we get enough people asking for that, it's something that we would consider. But we had to start with something, and we had to make the financial model based on, as Steve said, hundreds of different versions of licenses. So we've tried to really broaden the categories just to simplify it, but it's certainly something that we could look at in the future. Your second question around marketing. I would probably just say at the moment it's just capacity. So certainly MTBA, we have a schools program. We have an app. We've converted a lot of our stuff to an app earlier this year. We have just released My MTBA TV as well. But it's only to our members, and it's only fairly new, and it was limited to a particular person in our office was able to do that with funds that we had. So there's no reason why we can't do it, except I would just say at the moment it's probably capacity and capability. So it takes money and people to do that. But absolutely, there's the schools program is a huge area for an opportunity. We've seen a massive intake in our national schools competitions, and we see that that's very much an area that we can continue to grab those the attention of those families. BMX are already doing that quite successfully with very young riders. So we see that that's actually something that we need to nurture and enhance and learn from one another.
Probably just to add to that, the question around aspirations, these are things that we all aspire. We would love to be able to do more things in digital technology, more things in digital platforms, more things in many, many things. The list goes on, and we've probably all got our wish lists. It's just our capacity. And the aspiration that I really hope to see myself is that collectively when we get together, I think we can do amazing things together. And right now, I really don't want to be there trying to work my way through and manage what BMX are doing and CA are doing and all the other groups to try and ensure that we keep getting our market share. Let's make our market share the same market share. Let's work together to do that. And that's my aspiration, is that we work and grow our combined market share to create great benefits long term and see huge membership numbers grow as a result.
Just on that, I know, so I'm commentating the Olympics next year for Channel 7, doing BMX mountain bike and the road and track disciplines, and 7 have already come to me to just cherry pick my thoughts on which athletes from different disciplines, because they don't know which sports to go to. You've got to go to 3 different disciplines to find out which athletes are going to possibly be in the mix. They prefer to come straight to me as their employee to get some insight into who they think they should be targeting in the process leading up to promote. Now, that's what this does. This is a smaller, scaled-down version of, in terms of marketing, what AusCycling can do. You're going to the one organisation to find out what the great stories are leading up to the next Olympic Games that we can promote to get the maximum exposure for those athletes and that sport, going into an Olympic cycle.
Yeah, hi, my name's Justine. I'm with BMX, and I'm just curious. I'm about solving problems, breaking barriers, helping people to understand situations better. I'm sitting here as a BMX mum. I don't understand cycling, as in, what they do at a club at Cycling Australia and really anything else about the other bodies that you're talking about. So I feel it's a real barrier. I'm wondering, what have you done to help each body come together and be united in better understanding and supporting each other so that you can work better together? Another question is, I'm curious, I've expected that there would be sort of like a guest book or something where I could say, hi, I was here and I'm from BMX, so that you could have a gauge the representation of what's going on at each meeting you hold, because I'm curious as to how many are here from each. I see a lot of familiar faces from BMX. Put your hand up, BMX. Let's see it. Show the BMX. There you go. You see, we've got great showing there, but there's not a clear understanding of who's where from what and what support you've got from each of the entities. So, yeah, I hope you can answer those questions. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that. In relation to your second point of finding out which discipline everyone's from, we'll take that on board and see if we can incorporate that into the future roadshows and get some feedback.
MTB, hand up. Right, there's your MTBs.
Okay.
Road or track cycling. And BMX again. Well represented. Cyclocross, anyone from cyclocross? It's kids, that's Adelaide more so. Yeah.
In relation to the question of, if correct me if I'm wrong, but you're wanting to know what we did in terms of working together and breaking down those barriers, or no?
I am loud enough, but yeah, I know. No, as a whole, like I don't understand as a BMX mum why I would be interested in joining with Cycling Australia, because Cycling Australia is completely different to what BMX is. So how can you help us better understand each of the disciplines so that we can unite? Because obviously we're all from different areas, different passions, and I just don't have an understanding. So to me, I'm like, well, I'm quite happy with BMX. Okay.
And if you are quite happy with BMX, and I can understand why you would be, that's great. Stay involved in BMX, and you don't need to try a mountain bike or jump on a road bike. That's what this opportunity offers. It gives you the chance. If you're a BMXer and you are a BMXer for life, more power to you, and stay with it. But there's opportunities there for some people that might want to have a little bit of a dabble, find out a little bit more about road racing or riding a mountain bike, and for those people, this process gives you an opportunity to try that and to have a little dabble in something that doesn't mean that you've got to buy a new license just to give it a try. So, it may be that you don't know anything about road racing or cycling at the moment, but if you had the opportunity to give it a try, you might like it. And hopefully what we see with this process is we break down those silos that we've got. At the moment, we're BMX, Shane's mountain bike, and Steve's cycling. What we want to do is break those down. And somebody I think in Adelaide mentioned that 20 years ago they'd got together, the two clubs, the BMX club and the cycling club in their town got together and they had a challenge, and the BMXers rode on the track and the trackies rode on the BMX track and had a fantastic time. And this is what we see, these sorts of opportunities becoming available if we can all sort of get our head around. Yep, we are different. BMXers are different from roadies and mountain bikers, but we're cyclists. And there is opportunities for cross-pollination, and there is opportunities for learning off each other. And there is, opportunities for an increased capacity through a bigger voice as a whole. And nobody's saying that you've got to go off and give the other disciplines a try, but this makes it much easier for us to learn from each other and to maybe have a try with something that we wouldn't otherwise give a go to, and make cycling something that's much bigger and much more powerful in the community. What we want this to be is a sport and recreation organisation that is a fundamental part of the Australian community, and that represents everyone, whether you're a BMXer, whether you're somebody riding a bike to work, whether you're your little Gracie riding to school or jumping on a road bike. This is what we want it to be, and we want to give those opportunities for that cross-pollination across the disciplines, if you'd like it. If not, stay BMX.
Yeah, well, I will. But but what I mean is, like, you're wanting us to unite under one name, and unite as a sport, but we are three separate disciplines. Will we continue remaining three separate disciplines, or because there's these licenses that we can get? Is that helping us to better understand and be part of different sports? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, like you were talking about clubbies. Each club, BMX club, is very different to a Cycling Australia club.
Yeah, and a BMX race will stay a BMX race, as a mountain bike race will. There's not going to be any change there. Really what we're talking about is building the capacity of the system, because at the moment we've got 19 small businesses that are trying to provide services to members, and we can do that better if we come together. So over time, the measure of success is that you don't notice what's going on at the top level, except that your club is getting better support. So, for instance, there might be accounting services provided centrally, so that the treasurer, you don't have to go back to scratch if the treasurer changes. There might be more assistance coming out of the local office in terms of coach education, so that kids are learning skills earlier than they might otherwise not have been. And to be fair, one of the most difficult parts of this is a lot of the stuff that we're talking about improving is kind of not very visible at club level, and neither should it be. Just get on and enjoy your racing. But if we can improve the efficiency of the way we manage the business, we can make life better at club level as well.
Sounds a bit like culture too, Justine. You're talking about the culture. It's you, the individual, within your club that creates your own culture. And this came up in, I think it was Adelaide where it first came up. We were talking about culture. The BMX culture will stay the same. It's a cracking culture. It's not, and the downhill mountain bikers are not going to be forced to wear Lycra. They won't do it. So you just keep the culture of your sport, your own identity. That remains the same. It's just the name that oversees it all that changes, that creates the opportunities that comes with that. Where's the mic? There it is.
G'day. Tony Hancock. I'm with the Rat Cycle Club, mountain bike club. I was actually up with the Duncan and all the team up there. So I used to be president and chair of Mountain Bike Australia. So I've lived a lot of the this whole history coming through, and a lot of the questions that we've had here tonight really hone in on a lot of the negatives again that we keep coming back to, and that's understandable. We need to be able to ask those questions, and it's really healthy to hear that the board and all the management are saying, if you've got questions, bring them up in the right platforms. The worst thing we can do as a body now is if you let those negative perceptions or questions you've got fester and they go out, and I think it was mentioned, the sort of the keyboard warriors and that type of thing. I get hit with it already with the, hey, what do you think of this? I've been with Shane for, I can't remember how many years now, but this started a fair way back with Sports Australia was actually looking at mountain bike coming into Cycling Australia. There was a lot of resistance back then. And I think Duncan hit the nail on the head when he talked about this is not a merger, and we talk about Cycling Australia. Forget about all of these bodies. Forget about your bodies. Your disciplines still remain. You're not going to lose BMX. You won't lose track. You won't lose road. You won't lose cyclocross, or any of the disciplines won't be lost. We maintain that. The passion, cycling remains. Our passion for cycling, people's passion will keep it going. Doesn't matter whether AusCycling drops out or not. Cycling will remain. This is about the opportunity to make it better as an entity. And governance and management is boring, and cyclists hate that type of stuff. But it's important if we're going to compete on a global footprint, and even on a national footprint from the recreational side of things and everything. You can tell I get very passionate about it, but this is an opportunity. If you feel that you've got any queries about it, don't take it in the wrong direction. Ask it in the right direction and get the right answers. And if people ask you and you don't know the answers, send them in the right direction as well. There's a great opportunity here. I don't have all the answers, and we may need to find some of this. It's a difficult thing to be able to pull this size of organisation together. So not all the answers are going to be there straight away. We've got to take a leap of faith. So the leap of faith is one thing, and you've got to trust that there's going to be some pretty heavy-hitting people that are put in their roles to make it work out. As I said, there's not all the answers, so we've got to take that. Anyway, that's not really a question. It's just sort of, I can hear.
It definitely wasn't a question, Tony, but it was a great statement. Well done.
Yeah, but I can hear the questioning in the room, and I'm going, okay, well, it's just really important that people take it in the right direction, because after tonight, the biggest failing for this is going to be, and I think it was mentioned before, the voting. That's our hardest thing. Constitution. So Mountain Bike Australia, we've got to have 75% of every single vote has to get us across the line. If we had, now we did that 2 years ago. We changed our constitution. We had a negative platform start up. We had to get right on the front foot, and people weren't talking factual things. They were just scaremongering. And that scaremongering took a lot of effort to actually get the facts out there while people were trying to make just whatever they thought was a real thing. But we had to get out there and try and, bring out the facts. So it's important that you don't just use your own scaremongering. Get the facts and get the people pointing in the right direction.
Well done, Tony. Can I just indulge myself a moment? And we had a show of hands just before. It may sort of demonstrate things. If we can do that again. Can we just get, so the mountain bikers again, please, anyone that rides a mountain bike, put your hands up. Okay, so now stay up, leave them up, please. Road and track, no, you put yours down then. Put your hand up. Yeah. Right, so I ride mountain bikes, right, so I've got my hand up as well. And leave it up there if you ride road or track. And, if you ride mountain bike, leave your hand up, right? Everyone that rides road and track, put your hand up as well. Road and track, and that's mountain bike, road and track. And now everyone from BMX, put yours up as well if you ride BMX, or if you're involved in BMX in some way, you love it, you've ridden bikes, yeah? Now that's almost the entire room. And what do we all do? We ride bikes. We are all together in this. We all have a common interest, and I guess that's what we're really trying to push home.
Yeah, g'day, Chris Yonfish from Ipswich BMX. I just want to go back to old mate over there, Tony. I don't think anybody here is worried about what you were saying. I think everyone from BMX, we're all thinking BMX has come a long way in the last 5 or 6 years, getting funding from governments and councils and stuff, and none of us want to lose that. None of us want to get into this big organisation and then go, oh, well, all the money's going to go to cycling. We just want to protect what we've got and keep what we've got and continue to get what we've got and get better at it. And I think everyone's the same. we all just want to make it fair and have everyone get, you know, a chop at it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so the funding that comes into your state, specifically for your state, remains in your state. It doesn't get lost within it. And the voting process and the board process is shared equally amongst all three disciplines. So it'll still be fair. Anything local sponsorship, local funding that comes in from local councils or state councils, state governments, that remains in that state, in your area. Yeah.
Can I also just say, as boring as the Constitution might be, it is actually written with with equality in mind. So, we've put together the structure, the body, the voting, the board, and the structure has been put up in place, and all of our conversations, and back to the gentleman behind you, it's taken a long time. We've had a few arguments as well. It wasn't smooth sailing. There are very different organisations, models, idiosyncrasies in each of those organisations, but we actually are striving for equality, recognition of all of those disciplines, brands, and states. So if you get state funding for a BMX program in Queensland, you will continue to get that. We're not stopping you from doing that. What we're saying is that there is going to be some resources there who are probably going to be able to help you get even more, because they might say, well, we've actually done, we've actually got a template, or we've done a similar submission in Victoria. Here's something that you can use that we've prepared earlier, or it might give you a few extra ideas. Do you also need someone to come along to the state body and have those conversations, because we've already got someone available to do that. Now, they may be sitting in Melbourne, but they may be able to help you from there remotely, or they might be able to come and join you at those discussions. So if you get a specific program, you actually have to spend it on what you said it was going to be on, and there's no way that's ever going to change. The board and the management structure is set up to be fair and equal to whatever state discipline or bike that you ride. And that could be cyclocross, and it could be some additional ones that we are not aware of now. E-bikes may become its own category. They may not be part of mountain biking as they are now, and even the para group, they might become their own entity as well. So it is possible under all those brands and under AusCycling.
And there was a question from Narang, yes? Yep.
In the hands of AusCycling. Oh, thank you. Okay. Sorry.
It's definitely on.
So the money that's generated from each discipline that ends up in the hands of AusCycling, for argument's sake, BMX, the money that we bring to the table, is that all coming back to BMX, or in some way, shape or form is that going to be divvied up into the other disciplines that perhaps at the time aren't succeeding or as much, or aren't contributing as much at the time? Is it, like, my question is, out of all fairness, if we're putting all of this money in for our discipline alone, I would expect that money would come back to our discipline, not be sort of handed out to everyone. And I mean, I'm not saying BMX makes more. It wouldn't matter who it was. Is it going to come back to us, or is it going to sit in the kitty and get spread out amongst everybody else and not be then as beneficial to us as what it has been in the hard work that it's taken us to bring that money in? Does that make sense?
Shane's on this one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, to answer your question the best way I can, I think if you look at the money that you introduce into the organisation at the start is an investment into the future. And in a lot of cases, when we talk about workforce, and I can't answer exactly how many staff that Queensland may have in BMX. How many do you have? One? Less than one? Okay. Sean, how many staff do you have in Queensland? 8, 9? Okay. So what we're trying to do is take the investments that come in and then the revenues that come in from the various sources to provide resource and tools and staff across all disciplines that can deliver outcomes so that we can lessen the burden that may exist on some volunteer organisations right now to deliver all those services. So when you talk about investment levels being up and down, they will go up and down depending on the various needs at different times of the organisation. Some states might need more help in the first instance, other states might need less. But the investment will be made back from the cumulative funds of the organisation to support its objectives to meet the outcomes in delivering better service to members, more education opportunities, delivering events, providing community aspects, helping to lobby for government funding or facilities and places to ride and all those things. How that is actually set each year will change depending on the agreed needs between the advisory bodies, the local general managers and management and the board of the organisation. Does that help answer your question? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it goes into a pool and then it gets used from the organisation as needed. But what Shane said was, it's an investment into providing the services that cycling needs and providing the services that the cycling organisations at the moment can't provide. And that's a benefit to each club. And that's a benefit to each member. And it's making an investment. Look, BMX has a fair whack of money to put into this organisation. Now, how can we provide a benefit? No. No.
So your investment is money and people, the intellectual property, and everything that you bring into that business, and then that's also what comes out. You've got a $100,000 budget today. You will get $100,000 again when you ask for it next year. But you have 0.75 of a person. So what we're saying is in Queensland that there would be, the 9 from Cycling Australia. There's a 0.75 from BMX. Yes, there's some funds that come in. Mountain biking actually have an office here in Queensland, but we service everyone regionally. So you're putting in that money. You're getting back the money that you asked for, but you're also getting back people and you're getting back additional services and you're getting that national footprint and the ability to draw on all of those services. So you're getting a lot back for that investment. No, you don't get $1.5 million back, but nobody's getting that back to sit in the bank. It's actually being invested. So, if a club has money now, that money stays with the club, and the budgets get set now and they get approved, and they will continue to be approved and set. Does that make sense? Yeah, but I'm not talking on a club level. I'm talking on a state.
The short answer is, if it's tied money, if it's been given by a government contract to be spent on junior BMX kids in Toowoomba, you have to spend it in accordance with their contract and acquit it. If it's untied money, it goes into a pool. And the reality is you've got two options. You can either there's two questions: does state money stay in the state, and does discipline money stay in the discipline? And if we want this to succeed, and if day one there is whatever it is, 19 bank accounts, there's BMX Queensland money, BMX Queensland road money, Queensland mountain bike money, and it's all got to be spent in those buckets. It's just not going to work. You've got to have. The reality is that CA has historically had a lot of power, particularly in high performance. And has it been able to dictate high performance strategy, for instance? And we're all taking risks. When we first had this conversation, there was a view that CA should have 5 board members, BMX 2 and mountain bike 1. And at the first meeting we said, we're all equal. Forget about the head count. We might have 65 staff, which we do. we might get, might cost $20 million a year to run us, which it does. You know what, we might be the vast majority of the money. We might have $6 million sitting in the bank for high performance. Forget all of that. This will just fail if we're not all equals. Doesn't matter how many people you've got, what you've got in high performance, we're all just peers. And it was originally 2 board members for BMX, 2 board members for mountain bike and 2 for road and track. Now it's grown to 3. But we're all taking the risk. You know, the reality is I'm going to be the last ever president of Cycling Australia. We're shutting it down. And when Simon Jones walks into a board meeting next year, there's going to be 2 people he knows from road and track, 3 from BMX and 3 from mountain bike. You know, we're all taking risk. You know, we're handing over control of high performance strategy to this board. We're all putting money into a pool. Some states have got more money than others. Some disciplines have got more money than others. But if we start with 19 bank accounts, it just won't work. And you've got to just have faith you're going to have a good board, and the BMX will put 3 good people on.
Steve Petrie, I've got a foot in, I guess, every camp because I own a mountain bike, a road bike and a BMX. But my heart's with BMX at this point in time. Couple of questions. One is around the membership vote for MTBA. So 75% is the magical number. And I'm assuming that's of those that choose to vote, or is that of the member base? Those that choose to vote, right? Cool. The other one is around AusCycling as a concept. I support the concept of advocacy and all that sort of stuff, and I think there's plenty of great wins to be had. I'm a bit of a numbers geek, and I've just been jotting down some numbers. So we've got 2.5 million, let's say conservatively, that ride a bike. But of that, we're talking about 60,000 members that compete on those bikes. So that's 2.4% of that 2.5 mil. Our challenge, I believe, as AusCycling is I'm one of the 2,440,000 that don't count as that 60,000, but I ride a bike 3 times a week. So I believe the challenge for AusCycling is what can you guys, or what can AusCycling do for the 2,440,000 bike riders who regularly ride a bike but don't contribute financially 1 red cent to AusCycling? What could you sell me for $10 a year? Because if you could get $10 off me and 2.4 million other people, there's $24 million AusCycling could generate per year. Now, we don't have a product that we can necessarily sell. But if I apply a rugby league analogy, I've never played a game of rugby league in my life, but if I play rugby league, when I play, I don't go in the park and throw the ball around with my mates, but I'm part of a club. I'm providing revenue to Queensland Rugby League and the National Rugby League, or whatever rugby league, whatever it is, whatever the hierarchy is. But because I'm competing, I'm generating revenue. Our challenge is, obviously, we're all aware of it, as cyclists and roadies and trackies and whatever you want to call yourself, unless you're a part of a club and competing, you're not making 1 red cent for your organisation. So how do we get $10 out of every bike rider and make AusCycling a multi-million-dollar industry every year?
Yeah. I wouldn't go with that. That's too far out.
Because at the end of the day, success makes success. And that rolls into my next point about development, because we all want to see, pardon, I forgot your name, is it Scott?
Scott is.
I want to hear Scott commentating at Channel 7 commentary, talking about and knowing inside out with passionate knowledge the 3 BMXians that raced, the 3 roadies that are out there racing in the men's elite road race or the women's road race, and I want him to know passionately about the trackies that are out there winning the Kieran and winning the Madison and doing this and doing that. We can't do that with the siloed mentality we are now. So I fully support that notion. But developmental-wise, we've got, in BMX, we've got a HP coach who I believe is paid by CA. There's also a national coaching manager paid by BMXA. I'm assuming this is not a spill and fill type scenario. Everybody keeps their jobs and doesn't go through any sort of recruitment process. So at the national level, we've got BMX development fairly well covered from high performance and national coaching. We don't have a paid state coach. We have 3/4 of an admin person as an FTE count. So how does development get managed across all disciplines at the state level, and then I guess rolling that up, how does it aggregate up to the national level? So lots of questions, but see how you go.
I'll tackle the second one because it's freshest in my mind. I mean, that pathways piece is really important, and I see that as a key function of our local officers in developing that lower part of the elite pathway, and that could be a coach education officer in each local office that's working with clubs to increase the skill level. Could be of the riders, or it could be of coaches who work with that club, and that's discipline agnostic, because I think that issue exists across the system. I mean, there are very few paid coaches there are paid coaches out there, but they tend to work privately. They're not paid by clubs or whatever. Again, that's basically a white space area that we need to address. Coming on to your, how do we get $10 out of every one of the 2.5 million? Again, I think it's about coming up with a product that appeals to them, because there's no point, people won't join if they don't feel like there's value. Sometimes with, particularly on the road and track side, you hear complaints about the cost of membership. I think generally most of those complaints are actually about value, because there's a lot of people riding around on 10 grand bikes, or they spend, $100 on a tyre. So it's not that they haven't got $300 for a membership, it's just that they don't think they're getting $300 worth of value. And the same thing applies for the $10 person. And in my view, advocacy plays an important role in that piece. So again, a lot of those people, the 2.4 million, they could be just parents riding around with their kids on a bike path, or they could be people who are riding to work, or they could be people, going out in a bunch on the weekend or whatever. If we're seen to be positively contributing to, amongst other things, keeping them safe, then a proportion of those will say, okay, I actually think that's worthwhile investing in, and I'll pay my $80 and I'll become a member. I'm not, for the moment, suggesting we're going to get $10 out of 2.4 million, but it is a great ambition. What I can say is that, at the moment, BMX doesn't have a rec offering, mountain bike and CA do. We're about 30% rec across the two of us, so probably that means about 20% rec across the whole system now. British Cycling is about 2 times, so they've got 2 rec members for every race member. So if and when we get to that kind of number, that's 150,000 members already, and there's a lot of capacity to grow beyond that. But it's about relevance, and it might just be, for your cafe races, it might be a couple of tips a month. And this is the interesting thing about rec. A lot of what they're interested in is basically information, and it's that is very scalable. It's distributed electronically, so if you get a tip on your phone a couple of times a month for the price of a coffee, you might think, okay, that's good value, I'll join.
We'll just grab one from online. There's been a lot of questions in the room tonight, which has been awesome, but I'll try and grab 1 or 2 from online, because there are people in broader Queensland who couldn't make it tonight.
And we do have about 10 minutes left in terms of the Q&A, so we'll go online first, then we'll come back into the room.
This is from Tanya. Mention is made of an increased and improved support at national level. Is this capacity and capability already in place at national level, or does it need to be acquired?
I think it needs to be built. Again, it's the common problem that we all have is we're 19 small, under-capitalised businesses. If we're going to achieve the benefits that we're looking to achieve, we need to come together, and some of that means it'll need to be built over time, which sort of comes back to Shane's comment about it is a sort of an 18-month journey to get towards where we want to go.
Chris from BMX here. You talk about 19 undercapitalised entities at the moment,
and we're going to put all our eggs into one and have one risk as opposed to 19? How can we ensure it succeeds?
Go again on the mic.
This is a massive change for us all, and I'm actually just really relieved that this is such a positive environment. I was amazed to see this lot get together. Getting us together is going to be a fair bit harder, but the mood in the room is pretty positive. We all have concerns, but this is a massive opportunity to turn the face of cycling on its head for the better. And I just reckon it's up to us to make it happen. It's up to Queensland to lead this. We're probably going to have the most votes by the time we combine everyone in. We've just got a massive opportunity here to change sport for the better, and I think we should jump on it. And I think Queensland should lead it.
I'm behind you. Yeah, well done. Well said.
I'll just grab one more online if that's...
Can you hear me? I think it's about the shareholders doing what they should do. CA in historical times got itself into trouble, and the shareholders, the members, didn't do anything about it. They just watched a slow train wreck. And this is about a democratisation of the sport, creating one entity that's owned by the clubs, and starting with a good board, so that, the three disciplines get a chance to put on three directors, because ultimately it's the board and management who work out whether it's a success or a failure. So it's got to be well governed. Everyone needs to make sure they put forward the best people they possibly can. But in a social media world, when you look at those numbers, if 20 big clubs or all the Queensland BMX clubs didn't like a thing, and they create a WhatsApp group and they call the board and say, we're really unhappy about this, two of us are coming in to see you, they actually have significant power. At the moment, it's much more opaque. Clubs are the real owners of the sport. They own the states. The state owns the topco. If clubs are unhappy, they jump up and down. They go to the AGM. That happens once a year. They complain to the state body. The state body complains to the national body. It's not a very democratic system, I don't think. I don't think the bureaucracy is really that accountable to the people who own it, to the clubs. And I think under this model, there'll be more accountability. And if a big cohort of clubs, a state, a discipline aren't happy, they can call the board to account and yank the chain much more effectively. And I think that's how you control risk.
And we're talking about a revenue of 20 million moving forward. And if we look at 160,000, that's less than 1%. That's a lot of risk, right? So what guarantees do we have moving forward that we're actually going to be in the black?
So when you refer to 160,000, is that one organisation or all 19 combined together? All 19 organisations combined together made $160,000 surplus. Could you bring, when you find that statement, because that statement's not correct. I'm sorry, that's not the right number for 19 organisations. Did not make that money. You talk about 20,000 revenue?
20 million.
20 million revenue?
Yeah. You're talking 20 million revenue next year, right?
Collectively, 28 million.
Okay. I'll try and find it for you.
Yeah, look, happy to answer it, but if we could have the detail, then we can do it. We can give it the right question and the right answer.
I'll grab another one online. This one might have loosely been answered already, but it's come up a few times in the last few roadshows, so I'll ask it directly. Will clubs lose the ability to secure their own fundings, or will it all go through AusCycle? Other questions have asked that, in regards to local councils, getting grants, etc.
No, look, it's a great question. We want to be really clear that clubs' money is clubs' money. So the grants that you get and the funding you get from your council, or if there's state programs out there that can get you get clubs funds, those funds stay with the clubs. The money of clubs is not being touched in this process. All we want to do is give you the platform to try and grow those amounts.
Hi, I'm Sean Walsh from Balmoral. Just talking about the recreational members, as you call them, in the governance structure, what sort of influence do they have? Because they appear to have no voting rights or any way to, lobby, essentially.
They don't unless they join a club.
So I think that's one of the where people have talked about risk tonight. I think the two things to say about risk is there's a risk of losing an opportunity. I would love daylight saving in Queensland, as many of my colleagues would. But the example of that is you lose that opportunity, it won't come along again. We're not going to have a vote on daylight saving any time again soon in Queensland. Don't anticipate we're going to have a vote on AusCycling again anytime soon if this falls over and doesn't get support. So I think there is a risk in losing a massive opportunity. And I would echo Sean's comment in that I think that $10 from every punter who rides a bike, president of a club, we race. My previous focus, Saturday morning coffee ride, look out the window tomorrow morning when you wake up and you see the volume of cyclists doing a Saturday morning river loop on their road bikes. I know my mates who still do that Saturday morning river loop on a road bike will also ride their mountain bike on Sunday, whether it be at Gap Creek or Underwood or wherever. And they'll take their kids on their BMX bike to the local pump track. And then once a month they might pull out their gravel bike and do a mass participation ride or whatever. And they'll fly down to Adelaide and pay to watch Tour Down Under. They'll dial in and they'll watch the Tour, or they'll watch Paris-Roubaix, or they might even watch the Cyclocross World Championships on YouTube or whatever. And so we need to tap into those members because what's in it for them? They all ride multiple bikes, as the point has been made, spend a bucket load of money on their tyres and their bikes and everything else. They need to see a real value proposition in AusCycling to part with it. And they then need to be given a voice because they care about Olympic gold medals. They care about Australian success in cycling. And I bet you they would go and pay to watch an exciting BMX meet. I don't know when the next BMX meet is on out at Sleeman's. But if there was something that I could go to pay to watch, because I can go to pay to watch, I can pay to watch rugby league, rugby union, Aussie rules, and the national bodies of those sports are raking in the dollars from my gate fees at the Gabba or Suncorp or wherever. You imagine if I could go and pay, come and watch us race at Muzz tomorrow morning. And if there's opportunities all over the place, and I think we can only do that at a national level. But I think that's an important point that Sean's made about those rec riders. The value proposition needs to be real for them. And I think under that current structure, they don't necessarily want to join. I bang on to them all the time. Come and have a race at Muzz. Come and join Balmoral. They're quite happy to do the riding that they're doing. They're riding a bike. They've got money to spend. I think we need to give them a real value proposition. So they're just comments. But because the opportunity is also, the kitty. Like I understand BMX's concerns about, we're pouring in the money, but if that bigger kitty becomes a $24 million a year proposition, everyone's a winner. So I think that's just something to really consider.
I'm sure the recreational group, which is what I am now, would be quite happy to be involved in something that really pushed for road safety and for infrastructure, to get the kids riding back to school again and being safely, the parents knowing that their kids will safely get to school because infrastructure has been made for them to encourage them to ride.
So the point I'm trying to make is that, when you talk about advocacy, there are some curly issues, okay? And the way that we as racing cyclists view things will be different to the way utility cyclists views it, all right? What I'm interested in as a racer is quite different to what I'm interested in as a person who rides to work every day. And that's different to a recreational cyclist. But you need to give them a voice. That's what I'm trying to say.
G'day, I'm Nick from Rosewood and District BMX Club. I got a couple of questions. With Queensland, we are divided into regional zones. what is going to happen with those zones, those committees, their assets and their funds?
It's a good question.
It's a great question. I had to say it. My boss told me to.
Yeah, look.
No, it's a good question, mate. You just own it. It's yours.
I'm a lifer, so I got to do it. I've got a couple others, but I'll get that one.
Yeah, look, in terms of the zones, this is a unique situation.
Yeah, it is very unique.
all
That's
throughout
why
Australia.
we're asking.
I think in terms of, what's the official place that they would have in this organisation, well, we're saying that it's an organisation that's owned by the clubs. So I don't see it having an official place in the organisation. We probably need to have further discussions around how we can keep the things going that are being done by it, and hopefully having a number of employed staff can help with some of the aspects of the things that are provided at the moment by the zones. I also think, and if anyone of the Steerco guys fall off their chairs here, it may be because I'm just sort of talking without this having actually been formally discussed. But if there was a situation where clubs self-organised into a zone and wanted to have that without it being an official
entity,
oh well, yeah, within the AusCycling structure,
yeah.
I don't see any reason why we would say no, you can't do that. If that's something that's there and it's worked and it's been proven to work for BMX Queensland, then we can keep that going. In terms of the assets, once again, I hope they don't fall off the chairs, but I don't think we want to take those assets and put them into AusCycling. I think we can leave them at the community level. No, they're all okay with it.
I got another curly one. If this does go through, or will go through, or however positively, all the clubs in BMX, and I assume other clubs, are constituted to the state level. Is that the right terms? I don't know. So there'll be changes in legal documents like that. Who will have to take care of the payment of those legal document changes?
at a club level?
At club level, at state level.
I
you know what I mean? I think it would roll on from each level.
Yeah. So in terms of at club level, with your, I presume most clubs are incorporated associations. There's one or two clubs out there apparently in mountain bike that are limited by guarantee, but basically there's no changes to that. There's no need for clubs to change their incorporation. They just continue on as is.
Wording, we assume wording would have to be changed because go from Queensland QBMX or BMXQ to AusCycling.
Yeah, look,
it's not legal terms, but it's word terms that in case of issues.
If there were those changes that needed to be made to constitutions, we could easily provide drafts of wording that would assist you in that respect.
So they're the things that most clubs have got to deal with. Yeah. We've all had to deal with them at some stage. So just to have a bit of an on-run into the next leg of this, yes, it helps us with our decisions by many clubs. So so that's basically it. Yeah. Thank you.
No, we want to make it as easy as possible for you.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
There may be one more.
Insurance. I've just got insurance. So I believe at the moment BMX has got a bit of insurance. You fall off, hurt yourself, you're covered as such. Yeah, you got to fill in the forms. I know. Any word, any ideas? Have you, as the head group, had any talks or any ideas of what sort of insurance available for the bigger group?
So insurance will continue, obviously. What we're currently doing is talking to brokers at the minute to look at how we can actually align everything into one policy and get the best policy outcome that we can to benefit all riders, and it would be ideally the same policy across everybody. And we're currently working with brokers to determine what that would look like and to try and get the maximum value.
We would have a better buying power with the more members.
Yes. Yeah, we
basically,
would.
And that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah,
Yep.
we would, but we also want to ensure that what we give is a policy that has that is sustainable in the long term, and that we can ensure that we can mitigate the risk into it so that you don't get horrendous blowouts and things like that. So we're looking at it as a big project. It's something that has a lot of work in it, and we're currently going through it at the minute.
All right, cool. Thank you very much. Come on, give it to someone else.
Going around the table, around the same table.
All right, last one, honest. It also is an online question. Affiliation fees from clubs upwards, from zones upwards. It's a BMX thing, sorry. We have all these extra fees.
No, look, everyone's got a club affiliation fee, so we're just working our way through it. There's a few anomalies and a few differences between states. What we want to try and do is make it as affordable as possible. It's not about trying to charge clubs a lot of money, but what we need to do is just look at, and it's probably going to come out in some sort of banding around total member numbers and things like that. So, but we're just working through it, but there's no intention to see it as an excessive cost. Anything more, it won't cost any more than it does today to the top prices. There may be some variances up and down given club numbers, but we're still working our way through it.
Groovy. Groovy. Thank you very much.
No, well done. We're going online again, are we?
Yep, we can. Is Sport Australia going to give funding yearly, and how much of it is there to pay off debt?
I'm probably best placed to answer that one. The short answer to that is yes. So the funding that's currently provided by Sport Australia to the 3 different disciplines, we have said will continue. That it's on the public record. That's in the order of, for last financial year, $13-ish million. We've said that funding will continue into the sport of cycling and will be channeled through AusCycling. We think that's the most effective use of taxpayer funds.
Thanks, Matt. So we might do a couple more questions. We're just about out of time, so we'll just go around and grab a couple more questions.
Yeah, hi, Errol Doman's my name, long-time life member of BMX South Queensland. One question. I'm only going to ask one question. The words have been bandied around. Opportunity is a big word. That's the main word. There's been a few ifs, been a few maybes. There's a lot of weathers. Project was just mentioned just before. What happens, say we go ahead with this vote, we all go over to AusCycle, and it doesn't work out? Where do we go then? What have we got to go back to? Will we have anything to go back to? Sorry if I was quiet in the room, but yeah.
No, I think, look, we can always imagine doomsday scenarios. I think certainly the team that's been working on this for a number of months has been seeking to plan as well as possible to set up the business for success. We will have a quality board, and not to disparage myself or my 2 colleagues, I think that when AusCycling forms, it will be a more attractive business than any of the predecessor entities in terms of attracting a high quality CEO to run the business, and that's part of the way that we ensure that things go right. We can always imagine some sort of horrible downside scenario, but I think if we have a prudent business plan with sensible assumptions, quality management team, and a skills-based board that is mindful of risk as it oversees the operation of the company, then we've got a good chance for succeeding. I think if it doesn't, cycling will still exist. BMX will still exist. Then you start again. I mean, that could happen to any of the organisations in their current form. I mean, those who've had some history with CA are familiar with that. Yeah, I mean, you can always assume, you know, I might go outside and get hit by a car later on tonight. Touch wood, I don't. But yeah, but again, there'll still be tracks and there'll still be bike races, even if, you know, that horrible outcome did happen.
Up down the back. Should we make this the last question? Yeah. Be bold. Last question.
So, as a committee member, if we sort of basically, as an executive committee, decide that that this is a good thing and we want it to go ahead, what do we do as a committee to educate, inform our members, and get the word out so that we get this 75%? What are you going to give us to do this? Because the only reason why I'm here is because on a forum there was lots of debate, mostly negative about it, and I came to be informed. But like, I've got a email from each of the two groups that I'm a part of. Sort of the education so far has been fairly lackluster. So what are you going to give us as committees to educate our members and make this go forward if that's what we decide we want to do?
Can I just ask which discipline you're
Mountain bike and BMX.
Yeah, mountain bike and BMX. So there is documentation being developed. There's more documentation to be developed on the AusCycling website. There's quite a lot of information, and we would encourage you to direct your members and other committee members to that site to become informed. I think beyond that, if you've still got questions, you should send them in to the organisations respectively, or onto you can ask questions via the AusCycling website, ask for more information there. But over the next period of days and weeks, there will be more promotional material that you can access and use. There are some now that you can grab and take from that website, and that will be populated more. There's a considerable list of FAQs that answer a lot of questions that we've had previous and then over the roadshow to date, and that will continue to grow. But if there's something specific that is missing or that you suggest that could be of value, please suggest it to us. Tell us what we can give you that will help you promote this, or give you the information that you need to be able to make an informed decision.
Cool. And just on your website, one of your promo pictures for BMX isn't a BMX.
Martin? Okay. Noted.
Well, that's a good thing. If that's a big issue, then we're going well, aren't we? It doesn't matter so much. Yeah. One more. One in the middle. Yep.
This is for my wife, who won't get on the microphone. Hypothetically, 2 out of 3 disciplines want it, 1 doesn't. Where to from there? So we get a resounding success from BMXA, or from BMX, and we get a resounding success from CA, and the mountain bikers say, nah, we're mountain bikers, we're not lycra-clad, and we're not BMXicans. What do we do then? As AusCycling, what do we do? Does it go ahead without one discipline, and you're left to your own, or does it the whole thing fall in a heap?
There's no definitive answer to that, because I think it depends on what the nature of that outcome is. I think we have to go to the vote, see what comes out the other side. There may, you could imagine a situation where there's a majority of the 19 who are in favour of it, but it still doesn't get up. We just need to see what that outcome is. There may be another vote in 6 months' time or whatever, but I also note there was a comment earlier that you don't want to wait around forever, because it might take 10 years to come back.
I'm hoping it does. Personally, I'm hoping it does, because it creates opportunities and that advocacy that we lack as a collective, and as obviously strength in numbers. So I'm just playing devil's advocate, just to try and ascertain, so that if there is any negativity in the room, understand what the impost of that is. If you decide that, and the other question is of the clubs, how does the club that I'm a part of as a BMX dad, how does that club decide whether it's good for me as a member? Is there any recommendation that they survey their members, or does the executive of each club make that decision on behalf of the members?
We're not mandating a process that a club should go through. I think what I would say to people who are in favour of it, let the leadership of your club know.
He's got a strong arm. He's had his arm up for half an hour now, so this will be the final question.
Sorry, I said I was only going to ask one question, but just to answer those, I can't see the people that asked them last two questions about what do we need to do to get it out there. I think we need to get. It's not a secret society. It has been a little bit in the past. One of our presidents asked the question, "Why do we know about it?" Not a lot of people have known about it. It's been a little bit of a secret society, the whole issue. We're all knowing about it now. But my answer to them, both them questions that them two people asked, is get onto your zone committee. They should be out there, if they want it, they should be out there preaching the word. BMX Queensland, the committee of BMX Queensland, they should be out there preaching the word. And I'm not a member of, I'm a life member of a club. I'm not a standing member of a club. I don't dabble in club anymore. I've retired from all that dabbling, to put it nicely. But my understanding is there's not a lot of information out about it, only what people have seen on the website. Them committees should be out there. You want to get it through, preach the word, get out there. And maybe BMX Australia, Queensland or BMX South Queensland do a road trip around the clubs. Preach the word.
No, I think
good or bad, and make sure the people know about it.
Absolutely.
Not just leave it up to 2 or 3 people to vote on it.
No, and the committee, as was said, there will be more documentation that will be sent out, and like the full presentation is online. So individually, if we can steer all of our club members, or as many as possible, towards the website AusCycling.com.au, the whole presentation is on there, so they can really go through at their own leisure and really understand what it's about, because it is obviously a very, very important vote that will be.
That's right. That website should be plastered everywhere.
Yeah. Well, look, it's all very recent, very new. So the concept is fairly new. The implementation of the roadshow obviously is very new, so it hasn't had an enormous amount of time to be able to get out there and actually put it out there. This is where it really starts now, is coming around to each of the states, coming to the key people and club members in each of the states to educate and I guess direct the opportunities to you lot, that then you can go back and talk to your club members as well and really expand the conversation a bit more. Now, look, we do have to wrap things up now. So, thanks for everybody's contribution tonight, both online and, of course, in the room here. It's a passionate room. They're a very now the person. It was the second last question, I think. You said you were BMX, mountain bike, and road and track. Did you make that decision after you saw the show of hands? Because BMX obviously had the biggest number here. So you just go with the flow? You said you were BMX at the moment? Oh, that's good. That trumps it all then. As am I. No, I just thought you might have chosen to say you were a BMXer right now because of the extra number of BMXers in the room. No, look, thanks very much. And look, it does show the passion within all the disciplines, and got to give it to BMX. BMX really does have that great culture at club level, a real good clubland level, which some of my disciplines have lacked. They really have lacked over the last sort of 10, 15, even 20 years. So we will be looking towards BMX to get a better idea of how we bring the kids back into it. So thanks, everybody. Thanks to all of our panel members tonight. They really have put in an enormous amount of work in a short amount of time. Thank you very much.